like the product has to be fantastic. If your product sucks, I don't know if we can swear on this podcast, but if it's it's going to make your life absolutely as a marketer. So being absolutely relentless about making the product incredible. And so for an event, that's making the experience great.
We're back, and Nyle Bayer's back on the advisor journey with us today. Nyle, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I gotta say this every time we have a podcast with Nyle. Nyle was a person that encouraged me to go independent. He was a person that encouraged me to podcast. I owe Nyle the world because he was the first person like, hey, use your voice. Literally sent me the email script with all of the stuff, attachments to a mixer, podcast mic, and that led to me being here next to Will. So now I appreciate you, and we're so happy to have you. Before we kind of jump in, because I really want advisors to take away these gems that you're going to drop, why don't you reintroduce yourself for those who did not see the last episode with Matt Middleton, so they can know who you are?
Yeah, name's Nyle Bayer, CMO of Future Proof. Been there for about 3 years. We launched the Futureproof Festival, Futureproof Citywide, large-scale events, and our Futureproof Retreats. So events companies specifically for wealth management and investment management. Before that, have served at companies from software companies to asset managers to being an advisor myself at an RIA for about 8 years. So that's professional background. Personally, father of 3, live up in Northern California, love hanging out with my kids, going for hikes, coaching baseball, doing all the stuff that normal dads do, dabble in the music all the time as well. But professionally, CMO of Future Proof, and festivals come in right around the corner. So 5,000 people showing up.
This is the 4th Futureproof that we're coming up on. So it's got to be, this is just easy for you at this point, right?
I feel like I'm just getting used to it at this point because I don't have any events industry background. Similar to how, you introduced our relationship. I met Matt. We were both real young, like coming up in the industry. And somebody was asking me this the other day, like, how do you know this person or how do you know that person? And I was thinking about it, like, we all kind of met before we were anybody. Yeah. No one asked us that before. And it's amazing when you're able to, A, see the greatness in other people, and B, when they see it in you. And it's like, you don't see them for who they are that day. You see them for who they're going to become, or, all of it realized at the same time. And then when life plays out, it's like, everybody just pulls each other up. So it's been really cool to see that. That's how I met Matt. We encountered each other at an event and just stayed in contact. And I've been friends, my CEO, Matt Middleton. It's how we met. It's how I've met a bunch of people in the industry. Our networking area with Breakthrough is over a couple football fields in square footage now. It's absolutely massive. And then, 400 plus sponsors, activations along the boardwalk, people doing a lot of cool stuff. I feel like it's Disneyland for wealth management in particular. You walk by and everybody's putting their best self forward, their best version of their brand forward, and, making sure that people understand, what they're trying to put out in the market. So it's a really cool thing to be a part of, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you look at something like Futureproof, and I think it's easy with hindsight to be like, of course. The industry needed something like this. All these people, they're tired of being, shoved into hotels and conference rooms. But what are some of the non-obvious things that have made Futureproof successful? I mean, skip Third Eye Blind, obviously people are going to show up, but I'm sure there's so much that goes on in the background that nobody sees that has fueled the success.
I think our partnerships have been big since the beginning. Relationships are key. I think a lot of people think that, you look at this on a spreadsheet and you could just come in and kind of pencil it out, and it's just not the way that a lot of this works, especially when you're putting together events like Futureproof or Citywide that was literally on the sand in Miami. It takes a lot of tenacity. It takes a lot of effort on everybody's part just to kind of will it into existence, so to speak. And I think that's a lot of the stuff that you don't see. And just being a startup, we're close to 25 strong now internally. And then, we have a lot of partners, like I said, that really help us elevate everything that we're doing. So we probably spread out to a couple hundred during the events. But I think, building a company from scratch I can't imagine doing it any other way. Where, larger, more established that have kind of their tracks of how they run events and how they turn them over and how they have relationships with the different event spaces and things like that, it gets really difficult to disrupt yourself. And we've seen that in industries across the board, not just in events or in wealth. It's just, a consistent theme when it comes to innovation. So I feel like that's a big trick of, building something that is brand new, that you really have to start from a blank page in a lot of ways. So yeah, I would attribute a lot of it to that. And then the team has just been great. Like, you make bets on people in the same way that I was talking about us. I feel like our hires have been that way in a lot of ways, like people coming from all sorts of industries, backgrounds, most people not from wealth management, that really have blossomed over the years, that have continued to stay and get better and better at their jobs and owning the roles that they're in. So that's been incredible to see too. So it helps me kind of back up and just empower people to go do great things. And that's the stuff that you don't see for sure.
I got a question for you, man. You guys have a marketing engine that's incredible, right? So I wanted to figure out how we can kind of give that playbook, that blueprint to advisors today. So what is the multi-million-dollar marketing strategy for Futureproof? It's the reason why you've grown consistently every year for 4 years. It's the reason why this event is going to be exceptional. It's the reason why we sponsor each and every event, right? So just give us that playbook. If you can kind of break it down for us so advisors can try to replicate that at their size and scale in their practice.
It's like, oh, I need to drink the rest of the coffee real quick. I always start with the product. Like, the product has to be fantastic. If your product sucks, I don't know if we can swear on this podcast, but if it's terrible, it's going to make your life absolutely terrible as a marketer. So being absolutely relentless about making the product incredible. And so for an event, that's making the experience great. When we started out at year one in 2022, there was no networking program. There was no tech-enabled piece to this. It was all about experience. And I think I heard that word experience so much that we actually stopped using the word experience because it became like a word that had trickled out to every event, and it was all about experience, and still is. But really thinking about, how do we make this fun, first class, 5-star, in an amazing location that attracts people to what we're doing. And
what does it mean to you? What does experience mean to you? Like, because it is,
I think, more like experiential for us, as far as, having a great location, having great hotels to stay at and locations around the area, like great culture within the community that we're building into. So finding a good spot, like a city, is really important. I'm not a big Las Vegas fan for that reason, because it just constantly churns over. There's not a lot of soul, I would say, in that city, so to speak. No diss to Las Vegas, but just looking for something unique and different. And so for us, I would say, experience and experiential is probably the extension of that, all the way down to how we're designing the layout of the boardwalk. That whole piece, we're literally building a miniature city, from power to Wi-Fi to everything else that goes there. So when I would think about like a micro scale of that for an advisor, I think events are going to get more and more valuable. We've talked about this before as well, especially with the advent of AI and things kind of feeling more and more synthetic on the timeline, and it being harder and harder to differentiate what's real and what's not. Seeing each other in real life and resonating with another human being, I think, will become more and more powerful, building community around that. So that's where I think events will become a big deal for, advisors that are crushing it, in particular at building a community. The stat that never surprises me, but always surprises me at the same time, is 90% of advisors' new clients are referrals over and over again. So we could sit here and talk about outbound emails and all these tactics and advertising. And the truth is that the overwhelming amount of new clients that advisors will get are from referrals. Yep. So how do you create an environment that you're going to have people talking to each other? How do you create an environment that people want to share something new? And I think events are the best place for that.
I want to just dive in on experience. I was actually listening to a podcast on the plane, and I'm pinging Will in Slack. Yeah, pinging Will in Slack. And I'm like, hey, we got to do this and we have to do this. But one of the things that this particular person said, he was the founder of Bezel, which is a watch trading app that, I like. He was like, people are going to spend a lot of money on this app. Largely, it's their first time buying a watch. It can be $10,000, $20,000 or whatever. So we have to make the product feel like it's the place that you want to spend that type of money. So when I think about you saying experience, and I think about all the things that you talk about on this podcast, Will, I think about how advisors at first glance when somebody goes to that website or goes to experience this advisor, it has to just instantly instill trust in that client so they feel like they can give their money to that advisor.
Right.
So I just want to like regurgitate this for like some of the advisors that are listening to the podcast right now. Your experience starts with the website, I would say. And then you get into sort of the operational details that take somebody from the website into your process and eventually will make them a client. So I think that's a gem that Nyle is saying right now on the podcast, and it relates from your $1 million marketing strategy to what advisors can take away from this episode.
Every single touch point is an experience. And I don't think people, it's easy to sort of compartmentalize how, oh, this is an in-person event, this has experiential components to, oh, this is a piece of content, or it's something that I'm putting out on social media, or it's my website, and it's like, oh, well, that's not really experience, but it's a mindset, I think, of once you start looking at your business in that way, then your funnel design gets better, then your attention to detail gets better. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the person who's on the other side of the experience you're creating. Correct. And see the world through their eyes, basically.
Yeah, the digital experience is key. I was just talking to an advisor about that. He was like, oh, our client experience is great. We have awesome client services. And I was like, but what's your digital experience like? Because more and more people are competing, looking at their phone, being like, why is my wealth management app as easy as Venmo or Cash App or all these other, really easy retail apps that we have? So I think the digital experience is becoming more and more competitive as well. And for us, we want to make sure that our event apps are easy to use, easy to follow, so they don't have a lot of the things like the glut and the chat features and things like that we've found that people just don't use, and try to get better at, developing that out. But to your point about the website, I think it's key. That's where we start as our marketing team. If our website's not built to capture the attention and, educate, empower, inform people, we're not going to launch the event. It has to be ready to go before we do that.
Can we talk about that a little bit, right? Because it's like the biggest struggle advisors have is this organic growth, right? So it's like, how do I get people to even come to this website, number one? Right. And then I can start that process of converting them, right? Nurturing this relationship. So hopefully at some point they become my clients. So I was at the very first Futureproof. I had the honor of speaking on the stage, right? I felt like it was like a big day for you. I'm cheering from the sidelines, right? Right. But, you had I want to say 4,000 advisors there,
Less the first year. It was closer to 1,600.
1,600. Yeah. It felt like 4,000 people were there, right?
Yeah, it felt big.
But you had it was a big thing. It was something that we never seen. So just talk to us about how you get people to, maybe in that first year, to come. Because nobody knew what Futureproof was at that time. Largely, a lot of people don't know who these advisors are, right? So talk to us about that.
Brand, to me, as far as design, is a big communication tool more than anything. To your point that you said earlier, if someone comes and experiences your brand and they look at how the design is laid out, whether or not things are aligned in a way that makes sense, whether it's easy to follow with my eye, I'm easy to read it, understand it, or it's just resonating with me, I feel like that's a big trust communicator of I'm in the right place. So a big piece of that, a lot of the research has just been osmosis through working in this industry myself, as well as, just being outside of it and kind of understanding pop culture and where things are at and being able to infuse it in what we're doing. But that first year, when I came on board, I was 3 months away from the first event launching, and we hadn't sent even a single email as a company yet. So it was all mostly leveraging, our channel partnerships initially to be able to build these associations, a lot of our personal relationships, a lot of amazing sponsors that took risks on us. There was a lot of chatter in the background, like, what is this? Is it going to flop, be a fire festival, things like that. So fire people who took, massive risk on us and bet on us. And I feel like, leveraging our networks and kind of cashing in on that social equity that was built, if I'm being honest, was a big piece of that. So I think a lot of advisors kind of get isolated in their roles and don't drive a lot of their relationships outside of their practices. And, that stuff compounds over years, and you don't know when you need it until you come up with an idea and you want to bring together the community. And that's when all of a sudden it becomes a huge advantage for you. So that first year was that. I think after that, we started building out our more traditional marketing engines, I call them. Our website's a big piece. We get a lot of traffic now, but we didn't always get a lot of traffic. But you build it in a way that you expect that traffic to come one day. So you want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on where the pages that people are going to most, how are they clicking through it, is this converting in the way that we want to, simplify. I love the advisor websites that have 3 pages in a homepage, the homepage breaking down all the things that you probably learn more of on the additional pages, like the About Us page, the Services page, like a Resources page, and then just a Book a Meeting page, the Introductory Call page itself, which I don't know if I would consider that a page, pretty straightforward, Calendly. And for us, our big acquisition channels would be the website itself. We get a lot of direct traffic now that we have a lot of word of mouth. I would back up a little bit and say that our event capture is a massive piece for us as far as a tool that we leverage. So anytime you do stuff in person, making sure that you have your media team there is absolutely critical. For us, it drives, every way that we communicate what the event's about for the rest of the year. So if an advisor is doing an event and you don't have a photographer or videographer that's solid, I think you're completely missing the point of what's happening unless you're intentionally doing a closed door event. And now you have all of these tools and materials, assets, that you can use to be able to convey the story of what you're trying to do again. And if you're building events, you're never trying to just do one event. I want to do a whole series of events. And so that first one's the hardest because you don't have any pictures. You don't have any videos or sizzles or anything from it. You're just literally telling people what you think it's going to be and hope they show up. But once they do, you better be capturing it because that'll make your life hundreds of % easier for the next one that you do.
Yeah, that's a great point. You don't get to the 4th version of something without a first version. And I think that's what's so great about events as a channel is like there's this constant iteration. You are putting something together, you're getting a bunch of data, you're getting a bunch of feedback, and then you say, okay, next time we're going to do these 3 things differently.
Right.
You can measure the same stuff over, you can see how things are changing, how conversions are looking, and you're building a process essentially that can be tweaked. And the hardest part about that is doing it the first time.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Let's talk about network, right? This is the thing that everybody talks about, those meetings, right, while being at Futureproof. But I think your philosophy is a little deeper than that. So can you explain to us how network and community is a big part of your marketing?
Yeah, absolutely. So Futureproof has always been an I know ecosystems like this, word that everybody uses throughout everything, but it truly is an ecosystem play where every corner of the wealth management and expanding in the investment management industry is coming together, from service providers to technology providers to asset managers to the advisors themselves and all the different areas that advisors work in, from broker-dealers to RIAs and independents and everybody in between, insurance, banks, venture capital. Everybody is coming to this event from all corners, which has probably been a big growth for us as far as just head count because so many people are coming. And when you have that many people show up, the problem with events have always been you just show up and hope that you meet the person that you want to meet. Like there's this degree of serendipity that is off the charts for most events. So us trying to crack that puzzle of how do we engineer serendipity and just make sure that we make it easy for people to meet who they want to meet, like why they're there to begin with, and know before they show up that I'm going to have all these different people on my calendar and I know that these are all locked in. And that all of a sudden makes ROI for an event way higher for everybody. We take a lot of information in when people register, and it's always been a consistent top 2 thing that people are interested in across the board is networking and then like content and stage sessions. And it kind of trails off from there. So like 3rd and 4th are close, but those are always top 2. Networking is key. And for me personally, like philosophically, community has always been this thing that has helped drive my career from the get. I couldn't do anything if it wasn't for the people around me. Absolutely. And in personal life as well, life is hard sometimes, and having your people there behind you is key. And I've met you through this industry. A lot of people you meet through work. So being able to just connect people is probably the most rewarding part for me personally. The amount of calls that I've had with advisors that I've met, other advisors that they teamed up with, or people who are launching companies and walked away with their first $1 million in contracts because of the breakthrough meetings and things like that. That component, I feel like, was a 0 to 1 moment for our industry because now people are showing up and really getting ROI. But we also, take all these profile attributes and people have to double opt in. So they're both agreeing that they want to meet each other. And I'd say it was kind of clunky the first year that we rolled it out, because we were learning it as well, and it was like, oh, is it just for this group or that group? And now it's really for everybody. We have different programs inside of it. We have experience hubs that people can RSVP into. We have networking dinners that people can go into. We have crazy activations that people can be a part of. So you just know going into the event, my week is stacked with all this, as opposed to I'm going into an event and I hope it's great. I'm not like standing in the corner texting, pretending, to take up space.
That's me at events.
Yeah, that was me too. So it's like, how do we not make me?
Yeah, that's amazing. I have something to say about that real quick. There's the Paul Graham way of thinking, right? When it's like, hey, make things that people want. And advisors are doing that. They're niching down. They're saying like, hey, tech folks want this, equity compensation, and they're solving that problem, packaging it, and it's an experience for that client and for that advisor. And there's this like level 2 value add that I see with some of the best advisors and some of our fastest growing advisors at Altruist, where they are so intimately, they know their clients so intimately, they're able to provide another service or another value add. And I'll give you a couple of examples of that. Alex from Grape has those networking mixers, right? Okay. And for those clients, that's like a value add that they have that is essentially just community, but because he knows them so well, he's able to add that and offer that experience for them. DJ Wendell has that party every year, and his clients look forward to it. They bring other clients, right? And his firm grows organically from that. Root Financial on the last podcast with Ari just mentioned that they started like a Root community, right? So I think there's a couple lessons to take from what you're saying. Obviously, the main thing is the main thing. You want to make sure that the product works well. But as you collect the data on your clients, there are other opportunities for you to add value to those individuals, right? That will make relationships stickier, more scalable, and overall just a better experience for everybody involved. So I think that's a big lesson to take from what you're doing. Absolutely. And I would probably bet that in the next few years to come, you'll probably have a new finding, right? Yeah. And stack something on top of the networking that will make this an even better sort of experience.
I would like to take a brief detour.
Okay.
I feel we have you here. We have a side quest. This is my MO. We have you here. Like, I cannot imagine the stories that you have with the preparation or day of type of things that are just like, oh my God, everything felt like it was going wrong, maybe, but you like pulled a rabbit out of a hat. Like, can you just give us a little bit of the behind the scenes of like what goes into putting on what is now, I don't know how many thousands of people are going to be.
5,000 like, or more, yeah, that we know of. Give
us some of the like, the juicy details here.
I would just say that generally human beings love to procrastinate. And, everybody doesn't have the best self-awareness about themselves. So everybody's very important in wealth management. And the higher up you go, everybody is very important and considers themselves more important than everybody else. So like the competitive nature of the egos gets very strong.
There's a lot of swinging out there.
And
well, go ahead.
Follow me where I'm going with this. So a lot of it just comes down to, those last 7 days are just incredible in the amount of people that come out of the woodwork that have very strong needs. And that never surprises me. And there's this I would say the week before, I'm ready for the event to be over. Because it doesn't matter if we push the event another week out, you'd have this week of procrastinators that all have crazy needs. So that's definitely one that feels like a tight squeeze. I feel like there's things that we don't see probably operationally. If I had our head of operations here, she'd have some amazing stories about, stages having issues, bleachers needing to be moved, things like that. I think, other stuff, we've had some medical things happen. Luckily, we've had a great medical response team. That's definitely happened a few times. We've had some PR disasters. We've had some protesters. We've had things like that.
People protesting Futureproof.
Yeah.
Because on the beach, it's like an eco thing?
I think you just attract, when it's a big thing, no one knows that it's really there until you start building it, and then the whole community knows that it's there. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, so people want to come and be involved. But also, I think protesting is kind of a part of our culture at this point. The other things that are fun, something that I love that most people don't think about is that we do, those major concerts right there, and the beach is right there. So if you're walking by on the beach, it becomes a crowd. So when we had Big Boy in our first year, that was probably the biggest crowd that was outside of the fence. Yeah. And people were having a blast, like dancing and families and everybody just having a good time with that music. It was probably a little bit last year as well. I just didn't see it. And then some things I could share off the mic.
Tune in to the Advisor Journey after dark.
And then other things, like I would say, Citywide was interesting because we were literally on the sand. I don't think anybody had experienced that. There are a lot of events that are on the sand, but mostly they're usually retail focused or consumer driven events. And, they'll be just for the local demographic, and people locally understand how to go to the beach every single day. Like they live there, they're ingrained in that environment. When you fly in from a bunch of different areas, people have less of an understanding, like how do I operate on a beach all day long? So that was kind of, tricky in being able to navigate that. But I feel like we pulled it off. I just walked barefoot for half the time.
Yeah. Could be worse, right? So for the folks who are like gearing up to go, and maybe it's their first experience with Futureproof, or they're going back,
which is a lot of people. That's been surprising to me too. Sorry to cut you off.
No.
It's almost always 40%, 50% new people every year. I'd never been to a Futureproof event ever.
Is it net the same, or are you growing the audience, I'm assuming?
I mean, we're growing it. We capped it this year at the festival to 5,000 because we hit that last year, and it just felt like a lot. We're like, we can't grow anymore. Plus, we can't build any more hotels.
True.
So we've really focused in on the RIA world in particular at the festival.
So what do they need to do to get the absolute most out of Futureproof?
I think first, dress right. If you're showing up in a suit, you're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. This is a very casual event. We're outside all together. I mean, I've seen plenty of swimsuits out there. The beach is right there. I wish I could go jump in it all the time. Make sure that, if you registered before the networking program deadline, which was August 16th, that you're included in those things and that you're making sure that you've accepted all your meetings and experiences and dinners and stuff like that so that you know what your schedule looks like. If you haven't done that, there's still a ton to do. So I feel like just getting in, orienting yourself to where the boardwalk is, because people are staying all over the place. It really is festival style housing. It's not like a Vegas, you're all in one convention center and going to the same place. It's kind of figuring out where you're going to go. And then pace yourself, sunscreen, hats, things like that. Water is a big one. Mm-hmm. Those are kind of the big hacks, I would say.
Come
to the altruist table.
Yeah.
Hang out with us for a little bit.
Another cool thing about us is that when content is on the stages, almost all events shut down, the vendor row when they have content, and then when content's off, vendor row opens up. We're always going all the time. So if you want to catch something and you feel like, I'm not going to miss, I want to stop by this booth or whatever it is, you're always going to have time to do both. Plus, we capture everything. I think that's the other thing. Some people get mad when they miss a session. I'm like, it's going to be on YouTube after we chop everything up.
You said something pretty interesting, which is like, we can't build any more hotels, right? So it's like there's a ceiling for how big these events can be, and that's not a bad thing, right? It's like at a certain point Alex was saying after a certain point, his events were feeling like a wedding, and that just wasn't the vibe that he was looking for. So it's like, do you feel, I guess this will be the year that we see what 5,000 looks like, but is there a sweet spot where you're like, all right, this is it?
It depends on the format of the event. So our retreats, I think, do well. I think there's a floor to those, and I also think there's a ceiling. So like the retreats, I think, are better in the 400 to 800 person range. I think the festival, just because of the way the layout is, 5,000 I think is the right number. Mm-hmm. For citywide, I think we can grow to 10, 20, 30,000 people. I really do.
Is that because of the space and the accommodations that are around that sort of South Beach area?
Yeah, the infrastructure in Miami is just larger. I think it could become like an Art Basel or a South by Southwest type of experience, especially with our ability to tech enable different hubs. I mean, you could have the main area and then, the private equity stuff that's happening over here, and they never really interact with, all the wealth management stuff that's happening over there. So I think our ability to scale and not sacrifice experience is huge there.
I mean, Dreamforce in San Francisco is like 150 or 180,000 people descend on a 5x5 mile.
I know, crime
city.
Disappears in San Francisco for 1 week. It's amazing. I don't know what they do.
That's the power of Salesforce.
Yeah. It is. So we got experience, networking, right? Mm-hmm. What else, other sort of cornerstones in this million blueprint for marketing advisors should kind of pay special attention to?
Yeah, so for us, we come up with our event themes. Like if I'm just being more tactical on the marketing side and figuring out like how we want to talk about these 4 main categories of what content's going to be on stage, who are the speakers. So you're going to have talent. You're going to have a reason that people want to show up of this, common theme that everybody knows that they want to go and rally around this common thing. So it might not be content for an advisor, but it could be. You might get a local celebrity or somebody to come out and give a quick speech or just be present at your party. That can be really cool. So that would be like your content side. What's the takeaway that people are going to have? And then there's the actual experience itself, which is, for us, a lot of those visuals, the video, generally just being outside, outdoors, fun, first class, 5-star, all those things. So how are we going to speak to the actual experience? And then, our other pillar is the community itself. How do we communicate who's going to be there? Because there's a lot of, if you build it, they will come in events. You don't know who's going to show up till they show up. So it's who is in our audience, who's registered already, who do we think is going to come based off of indications of interest, and communicating that out. On the sponsor side, who do we think is going to be here? So they send the right people and have a good experience. And on the advisor side, who's going to be there that you might want to meet so they have a good experience. It's all about like expectations, meeting reality. And then after that, it's just like big announcements that we have that are leading up to it. And that's where I think a lot of it, not advisors, I think it's generalizing, but a lot of people in general for events drop the ball on the communications leading up to their event and then post-event following up with everybody. A lot of them just think about the event itself. And I think that translates to overall acquisition in general. People think about their product and they don't think about the journey to discovering the product and then actually onboarding into it. And it's the same thing with an event. How do people discover you? What are the announcements that you're making? How are you communicating what's changing and the updates that are happening? And then after the event, how do you follow up with them and make sure that you get all the learnings that you can and make sure they had a good time. And if they didn't, you learn from it.
That was one thing you said. You were like, hey, we really want to figure out what these themes are. And something that I can actually say, just being here at Altruist, I feel like we're dinosaurs here now. But like Jason from the onset was like kindness, brilliance, grit. That's what we're going to be about, And I wonder what advisory firms would look like if at the onset they kind of planted their flag and said, like, we're going to do this exceptionally well. Right. And every person, every player on the team, our tech, our product will embody this, So I really thought that was brilliant.
I love that. Absolutely. And you get away from features and different, specific services that you offer, and you more get down to like first principles or, I'm a big jobs to be done, jobs theory guy. I'd start there, like Clayton Christensen's model of thinking about how you structure things to get a product before you even go to market. And I think that's the right way to approach it. I don't think a lot of advisors do because they have so much momentum and so much, I would say, like contamination of how we previously did things. But there's a massive reset that's happening right now. I would argue that AI is like the new transistor. And so now's the time where each area of your business is being rethought. Do it now. Like it's a big reset time.
Something you said towards the beginning of the conversation was that you got 25 people on the team now or something like that. You've hired a ton of people from outside the industry. What, for the larger firms that are considering hiring roles outside of that sort of just traditional CFP or maybe bringing on marketing people or whatever it may be, like what are you looking for that has made those hires work so well?
Yeah. I start with the culture fit, and I use culture as, super loose term. Like, are they going to fit with the team? Basically, the team that's already here, you want to make sure that people get along and work well because they're going to bring the best work out of each other. So that's like a non-starter. You can be an A+ talent on paper, but if you're not going to get along, you're not going to help everybody else get better. So that's always been a big thing. They have to match up with everybody and just be pleasant, basically, is a big thing. And then after that, I feel like it's those core characteristics of, I use FIO all the time, which is figure it out. So we're always figuring stuff out. Do you have kind of the mindset to not get stuck? And when you do get stuck, figure out how to get around that obstacle, whatever it is. And a lot of times the obstacle is the right way to go anyways. And then people who just get stuff done constantly. And I can see that pretty quickly based off of, people's lives are so transparent now. It's really not a difficult thing to get through a conversation, figure out, does this person have curiosity? What have they done that showed tenacity? How do they continue to push over obstacles in their own lives? And if they show those core attributes, usually I'm ready to take a bet on them. After that, it's, what's your professional background? Are you qualified for this? Is this the right fit for the role? Sometimes, it's tough because it's just like a baseball team. They might be an all-star athlete, but you don't need two shortstops. You need everybody to play their own position. And if you're hiring for a left fielder and an A+ shortstop walks in, but you already have one, it's like, I don't know, I might hire you to trade you. I don't know. I'm not a baseball person, but professional. But anyways, that's kind of how I think about it. They got to be the right fit, personality-wise. They got to be the right fit for the position, but more so, they have to be able to figure it out because that's exactly what we're doing every day.
Yeah, we're hiring a lot of people here at Altruist, which has been awesome. The growth has been very exciting. One trait that I have really, I'm looking for it more than I ever have in the past is attention to detail.
Oh, yeah.
Because figuring it out, amazing. Like, you need problem solvers, but I think especially as the AI, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, sort of brings C players up to B players, like, you need ways to stand out. And I think it comes down to the finer details at this point. Yep. So that's just a little plug for those people hiring out there.
There are little traps that I'll set during the interview process. Little things like I'll send out my calendar link to people when they just have submitted their resume. And we're not hiring at the scale you guys are, but this is just like a little trick. So there's 15 minutes or 30-minute option available. I say book a meeting with me for 30 minutes and, we'll talk. If someone books a 15-minute meeting, they're out. An attention to detail thing. I leave it open on purpose.
Right.
Because we'll get hundreds of people applying. I don't have time to go through everybody. But if I can filter out 30 people because of this little trick, great. So there's little traps like that I'll plant during the process just to see, like, are they paying attention? Because I really don't have time to go through these things that really don't matter. And if you can get through those steps and then we can get to the conversation, then you've made
Great. I'm sure we'll have to source a ton of those little hacks from social or something.
Yeah. Now, you've taken us through hiring advice, marketing advice, experiential advice, right? Is there anything else you want to share with the advisors that are listening to this episode? I'm sure many of them will be at Futureproof next week to experience everything that you've been working on seemingly all year long. But what other gems do you want to leave them with before we wrap up?
I think AI is the big elephant in the room for everybody right now. At first, I was kind of, hesitant to believe that was the mainstream, but it's very strong. And we just lived through the blockchain and Bitcoin craze, and I was very directly involved with that. And this feels way more real than that was at the time, even though Bitcoin is obviously very real. It's over 100,000 right now, so it's a big deal. But the actual kind of adoption of it is so widespread right now. And I think a lot of people are thinking about it in so many different ways. My view is I think it's probably the best time to be an advisor because all of these additional tools will allow you to do more and be in front of your clients more often. So I think that book by Seth Godin, Linchpin, is probably more valuable now than it's ever been. So thinking about how you're putting yourselves in these people's lives in a way that is irreplaceable, as opposed to something that can be commoditized away through a process, which is what AI is doing. I also think, people are talking about, single person billion-dollar RIAs and things like that. And I don't know, I think I'd be more interested in having a 10-person team that can now do way more, like what 30, 50 people could do, than working by myself and being alone all the time.
Yeah. Not taking any vacation if you're a single person billion-dollar firm,
quiet
that's
quitting.
for sure.
You quiet quit, it becomes a 0-person RIA. So I just think, everybody's thinking about AI right now. I think it's probably the best time ever to be an advisor. I know a lot of people have said that every 5 years when we go through a new cycle, but the future definitely won't look anything like the past because of it. And, now's the time to really get curious and learn new things and let it develop at its own pace and figure out what's right for you and share ideas and, make new connections because of this, cross-pollination that's happening.
Yeah, probably one of the best times ever to start dabbling in events if you're not doing that yet. Now, where can people find you?
Pretty much on LinkedIn only right now. So you can find me there. or at any of these events. If you see me walking around with the earpiece on or whatever, please stop me, say hi. I would love to say hi to everybody.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us now. We appreciate it. This isn't going to be the last time that you come in person to this studio. Just hope you know that. So we'll be pinging you at some point. And Will, thank you, man. You've been a great host. I'm really liking our vibe. Now, if you like this podcast, what you can do for us is please subscribe. We're on YouTube. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. We're everywhere that you need to be and you need to listen. So go ahead and listen there. And if you haven't scheduled your demo with Altruist, go to altruist.com/podcast. We appreciate you. Until next time. See you soon. Thanks, Nyle.
Thank you for listening to The Advisor Journey by Altruist. Brokerage-related products and services are provided by Altruist Financial LLC, a member of FINRA/SIPC. Results may vary. Altruist and its affiliates do not provide tax or legal advice.